There's a fine line between millionaire and broke. One impulsive decision, one flashy expense, one ignored warning sign, and your empire doesn't just shrink, it vanishes. Welcome to the Money Compendium. Today, we're exploring 10 millionaires who lost it all, and how you can avoid their mistakes. These aren't just stories. They're red flags, psychological traps, and high-stakes decisions that even capable people can make. This video is not meant to poke fun, insult, or criticize. No, this is a cautionary tale showing that financial loss can happen to anyone. No one sets out to lose their wealth on purpose, and shaming ourselves or others for simple mistakes helps no one. So let's let go of the shame and the guilt and instead choose to learn both from our own mistakes and from the mistakes of others. Not everyone that loses it all fails to get it back, and that's an important lesson. For anyone out there that has taken a chance and lost big, know that from the bottom of our hearts, here at the Money Compendium, truly, we hope that you find your fortunes again. Unfortunately, not all of the losses are innocent mistakes. Some were calculated deceptions that resulted in real legal consequences. It's not our mission to belittle or judge, so for anyone in these situations, anyone that feels their only path to success is by scamming others, we still hope your story ends up being one of redemption, filled with success. Just keep your future endeavors legal, ethical, and compassionate in nature. Now, if you want to build wealth and keep it, study what took these empires down. Because the biggest risk is the one you don't even know exists. Number 1. The fame trap, MC Hammer. In the early 1990s, MC Hammer wasn't just famous, he was everywhere. He had platinum records, Pepsi endorsements, and a reported net worth of over $33 million. But behind the parachute pants was a financial time bomb. Hammer bought a 12-bedroom mansion in Fremont, California for $12 million, hired a 200-person entourage, and reportedly spent over $500,000 a month just maintaining his image. This wasn't investment, it was identity inflation. But when the album sales slowed and the tours dried up, the spending didn't stop. Because by then, it wasn't about money. It was about ego, appearances, and fear of losing relevance. By 1996, MC Hammer filed for bankruptcy with more than $13 million in debt. If your lifestyle depends on staying famous, plan for the moment the spotlight fades. Number 2. The overleverager, Alan Stanford. At one point, Alan Stanford looked like the picture of billionaire success. He ran the Stanford Financial Group, lived in luxury, flew private, and was knighted in Antigua. Forbes even estimated his net worth at $2.2 billion. But behind the tailored suits was a $7 billion Ponzi scheme propped up by fake certificates of deposit, allegedly offering unusually high returns. Stanford wasn't investing. He was recycling investor money to sustain the illusion. The scheme began unraveling in 2008, and by 2009, the SEC shut it down. In 2012, Stanford was sentenced to 110 years in federal prison. This one is a hard lesson to learn. You can't fake credibility forever. In business and finance, trust is leverage. But when it's abused, the collapse is exponential. One crack in your foundation, and the whole empire sinks. Number 3. The subtle bleed, Eike Batista. Eike Batista was once the 7th richest person on Earth, worth over $30 billion, thanks to a series of ambitious ventures in oil, mining, and logistics. His company OGX promised to unlock massive oil fields off Brazil's coast. But there was a problem. The oil wasn't there. As exploratory wells failed and investor confidence fell, Batista kept borrowing to maintain momentum. He was over-leveraged and publicly committed to projections he couldn't deliver. By 2014, Batista had burned through nearly everything and owed more than $1 billion, making him one of the few billionaires to publicly swing from ultra-wealth to negative net worth. Some fortunes don't explode. They slowly leak. Confidence without correction becomes delusion, and the lies compound. Don't let yourself get trapped by your own deception and stuck in a situation where you feel so pressured to deliver, but are almost certain you'll fail, that you spend even more money just to delay the embarrassment of the fall. Number 4. The one-bet wonder, Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes had the pitch. Low-cost blood tests using a single drop of blood. It promised to revolutionize medicine. Her company, Theranos, hit a peak valuation of $9 billion, with investors like Rupert Murdoch, the Walton family, and top-tier venture firms all buying in. But behind closed doors, the technology didn't work. Tests were unreliable, results were fabricated, and lives were potentially endangered. Instead of owning the fail and pivoting to new opportunities, Holmes leaned in, but the illusion only bought her time. Investigative reporting by the Wall Street Journal exposed the fraud, and in 2022, Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Believing in your vision is admirable, but if your success relies on deception, even self-deception, your collapse is inevitable. Never stop pushing your dreams, but don't fake success. Let go when things get so bad that you need to lie to keep it going. Accept the loss, learn from it, then regroup and pivot into something better. Number 5. The Inheritance Flameout, Willie Gary Jr. Willie Gary Jr., son of legendary attorney Willie Gary Sr., inherited millions of dollars and access to the high life. But unlike his father, Jr. had no legal training, no wealth management structure, and no guardrails. He quickly racked up headlines for reckless spending, lawsuits, and financial mismanagement. According to court filings, he drained bank accounts and misused company funds, all while dodging mounting legal trouble. Eventually, much of the inherited wealth evaporated, tied up in legal disputes and repossessions. A sudden windfall can be exhilarating, but if I could give any advice to someone that has just inherited a fortune, it would be to not take advice from me, from friends, or from family. Put off spending until you have a chance to seek professional help. Lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors to help you plan out your finances. And something that most people will overlook, find a therapist to help you keep perspective. Money is stressful, and that includes both losing it and making it. Many lotto winners fall into pitfalls because they aren't expecting the mental health challenges that accompany sudden wealth. And add that to the loss of a family member, as in the case of inheritance, and overlooking your mental health is a recipe for disaster. Number 6. The Loyalty Trap, Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage wasn't just a top-paid actor. He was a walking ATM for the people around him. He earned more than $150 million starring in box office hits, and his spending became Hollywood legend. A private island in the Bahamas, multiple castles in Europe, dinosaur skulls, albino cobras, and even a haunted house in New Orleans. But the real leak wasn't just exotic luxuries. Cage reportedly gave money to dozens of friends, family members, and even distant acquaintances, often out of guilt, obligation, or sheer emotional pull. Every call was a request. Every request felt like a duty. And he always said yes. Eventually, the math didn't care how noble his intentions were. The IRS hit him with over $6 million in back taxes. Several homes were foreclosed. Priceless collectibles were sold at auction. Loyalty had become a liability. Being generous is admirable, but without boundaries, it turns wealth into a rescue mission. Cage eventually returned to steady acting work, but the lesson sticks. If you don't guard your fortune, someone else will spend it for you. Now, we're not saying you shouldn't or can't help those close to you, the people that had your back long before your money came. Just make sure that giving is in the budget and that you pay attention to gift taxes. That's right, gifts can be taxed, and heavily. As of the creation of this video, you can give roughly $19,000 a year to any individual before the gift tax kicks in, or about $13 million total, given within your lifetime. This can get a little complicated to understand and does affect inheritance, so before giving money, make sure you fully understand how these taxes work. My personal method for giving money is first, that I never expect to be repaid. I just consider the money gone because holding debt over family and friends' heads isn't worth it to me. Second, I actually budget how much I can give to others based on how much money I have budgeted for frivolous spending. So if a friend needs some money, I take it out of my video games or movies budget before anything that will hurt me financially. Number 7. The Philanthropy Sinkhole, Sam Bankman-Fried. He was crypto's golden boy, the hoodie-wearing billionaire who promised to save the world. Sam Bankman-Fried built FTX into a $32 billion empire and styled himself as a modern-day Robin Hood. He championed effective altruism, a movement focused on earning massive wealth just to give it away more efficiently. He pledged to donate billions, spoke at Davos, funded political campaigns and pandemic prevention. But there was one problem. Most of the money he gave wasn't his. Behind the scenes, FTX customer funds were being siphoned off into high-risk bets, insider loans, and media-friendly donations, a shell game built on borrowed money. When the house of cards collapsed, it wiped out billions. Bankman-Fried is now convicted of fraud, awaiting a long prison sentence and forever branded as one of the most spectacular financial implosions of the century. Generosity without accountability isn't virtue, it's vanity. So when you give away money, just make sure it's your money you're giving. Number 8. The lifestyle investor, Mike Tyson. At his peak, Mike Tyson was untouchable, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, feared in the ring, and earning over $30 million a fight. By the end of his career, he'd brought in more than $400 million. But the spending? Olympic level. He bought a $2 million gold bathtub, owned multiple tigers, flew in private jets for shopping sprees, and when he wasn't spending on himself, he was funding an entourage large enough to staff a hotel. There was no strategy, no portfolio, no plan. Tyson filed for bankruptcy in 2003 with over $38 million in debt. Most of what he owned was already mortgaged or sold. He later rebuilt part of his career through acting and endorsements. But the fortune? Gone. It wasn't one bad investment. It was death by 1,000 splurges. Wealth is a machine that needs maintenance. If the expenses always rise faster than the income, no empire can survive. If you have trouble budgeting for yourself, please seek a professional that's willing to tell you, no, you can't afford that right now. Number 9. The market chaser, Jesse Livermore. Jesse Livermore was a stock trading legend before Wall Street even had computers. He made, and lost, several fortunes in the early 1900s, but his biggest win came during the 1929 crash. While most investors were ruined, Livermore shorted the market and reportedly made the modern equivalent of over $100 million. He was hailed as a financial prophet, but he couldn't follow his own rules. Livermore had a brilliant system for analyzing market momentum, but he often broke his own strategy, chased trends, and let emotion overrule discipline. He'd win big, then bet bigger, and lose it all, over and over again. Despite his intellect, he died broke in 1940, and by then, even his closest friends had stopped taking his advice. The lesson? You can beat the market, but if you can't beat your own impulses, no victory lasts. Systems are useless if you don't stick to them. Number 10. The myth believer, Markus Persson, Notch. Markus "Notch" Persson went from indie developer to overnight legend when he sold Minecraft to Microsoft for $2.5 billion. His payday was one of the biggest personal tech exits in history. He bought the most expensive mansion in Beverly Hills, about $70 million cash. The parties were insane, and the world expected a new tech tycoon to emerge. But then, nothing. Persson confessed to feeling deeply isolated. The creative chase that had driven him was gone. Interviews revealed an emptiness. Despite the money, the house, the attention, his identity had been tied to the hustle. When that ended, so did his sense of purpose. Money can solve problems, but it can't fix everything. And if something feels off in your life, like you should be happy but just can't quite get out of that funk, this is a great time to seek therapy and try to gain some perspective. You are not alone in these feelings, and there is nothing wrong with seeking help. So what actually sinks a fortune? Not just bad math. Sometimes it's the very things we admire most. Loyalty, vision, passion, generosity. But without structure, even the noblest traits become traps. The truth is, money doesn't care how smart you are. It cares how consistent you are. And no amount of passion, genius, or good intentions can replace habits, guardrails, and clear thinking. The best way to protect your money? Build systems that run when you're tired. Set rules before the emotion hits. And always question the stories you've been told. In our next video, 10 money myths that are making you poor, we're diving into the common advice that sounds smart, but slowly drains your wealth. From bad budgeting tips to hustle culture lies, we're cutting through the noise. This has been the Money Compendium. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to help us grow the channel.